ask you a question. Have you ever wasted your wisdom on someone who didn't even value your words? Have you ever poured out the depth of your heart, your experiences, your truth, only to see it trampled like pearls thrown before pigs? You see, one of the greatest tragedies in life is not just being misunderstood, it's being undervalued by those who were never qualified to hear you in the first place. There's a danger in speaking truth to the wrong audience. There's a cost to sharing what is sacred with those who are careless. Some people don't want answers, they want ammunition. They don't listen to understand, they listen to debate, to mock, to diminish what they never took the time to build. Every truth you carry was bought with pain, with process, with time. And not everyone has the maturity to respect it. Why do you keep giving diamonds to people who think they're just shiny rocks? Why do you keep opening the vault of your life to those who only came to steal? It's not arrogance to protect your truth, it's wisdom. Some people haven't earned the right to hear your story because they never honored your silence. Truth is a treasure, not a transaction. It is not something you toss casually into every conversation like spare change. No, truth is more like a jewel, formed over time, tested by pressure, and refined in silence. It is the product of your journey, your scars, your lessons, and your evolution. And yet, far too many people treat truth like it's cheap, offering it up to those who haven't paid the price to understand its value. Have you ever noticed how people will ask for your opinion, but they don't want your truth, they want your agreement? They're not really seeking insight, they're seeking comfort. And when your truth doesn't align with their convenience, suddenly you become the problem. You become too deep, too intense, or too much. But the issue isn't that your truth is too much, it's that their capacity is too small. Every time you speak truth, you're giving a piece of your mind, a fragment of your spirit, and sometimes a wound that has barely healed. And when you give that to someone who hasn't cultivated the maturity to hold it, you're not helping them, you're hurting you. Some people are not containers, they are drains. They don't hold what you give, they empty it. They dissect it, question it, twist it, or worse, throw it back at you when the moment suits them. And this is why you must stop offering sacred things to careless people. There's a principle that says, do not cast your pearls before swine. It's not an insult, it's a warning. Pearls have value, but pigs don't understand pearls. They don't have the capacity to distinguish between what feeds their body and what feeds the soul. And when they can't use it, they trample on it. That's what some people do with your truth. Not because your truth lacks power, but because their perception lacks purity. Let's talk real life. Imagine you've been through a storm. Financial loss, betrayal, failure, rebuilding, and through that storm you discover a truth. Maybe it's the truth about resilience, or the strength you never knew you had, or the false relationships you had to lose to find the real ones. That's not just information, that's wisdom, that's treasure. That's the kind of truth that came with a cost. But then someone casually asks you for advice. And you pour out everything. You give them your blueprint, your scars, your gold. And they nod and walk away unchanged. Or worse, they mock it later, misquote it, or act like it was never offered. How many times will you let that happen before you learn to protect what is precious? You don't walk into a bank and ask for a withdrawal without identity. You don't get access to the vault without credentials. And yet we keep handing people emotional and spiritual access they never earned. Some truths are only meant for those who've been tested by silence, who've proven they can be trusted not just with your answers, but with your questions too. And here's the tension. Many of us share our truth because we're trying to be real, trying to be honest, trying to be transparent. But transparency without discernment is vulnerability without protection. You don't owe your truth to everyone. You owe your truth to those who can carry it, honor it, and grow from it. Ask yourself this: who in your life is worthy of your truth? Who has demonstrated the patience, the listening, the empathy to receive your heart without judgment or exploitation? Who has stayed when others left, listened when others dismissed, leaned in when others walked away? Because until you can answer that, you must treat your truth like treasure. And treasure is never found lying out in the open. It's hidden, protected, locked away until someone worthy comes along and proves they can handle it. So be wise, speak less, observe more, and remember, just because it's your truth doesn't mean it belongs in everyone's hands. Protect your wisdom from unqualified ears. That might sound harsh in a world that celebrates openness, but there is a difference between being transparent and being irresponsible with what you've learned. Wisdom is not just information, it is lived truth, tested by time and refined through pain. It's not something you found in a book. It's something you found in yourself after you survived what could have broken you. The danger is, we often assume everyone deserves access to that. We assume that because someone asks, they're ready. That because they're in our circle, they're safe. But proximity does not equal maturity. Just because someone is close to you doesn't mean they can carry what's inside you. Have you ever opened up to someone only to regret it almost instantly? You share something personal, a life lesson you paid for with blood and tears, and within minutes you realize they didn't have the depth to even process it. They looked at you blankly, they shrugged it off, they made a joke, not because your words weren't powerful, but because they weren't prepared. They didn't have the soil to receive the seed you were trying to plant. It's like placing a priceless sculpture in the hands of a child, not because children are bad, but because they lack the awareness to value fragility. Wisdom is fragile like that. It's weighty, and it's not meant to be tossed around like a casual story. There are people who will take your wisdom and turn it into gossip. Others will dilute it, manipulate it, or use it to discredit you when the moment suits them. That's why you must be discerning, not fearful, but wise. Think of a mechanic who spent 20 years mastering his craft. He understands engines, the nuances of sound, the language of machines. Then someone who just watched 2 YouTube videos walks in and starts giving him advice. What should he do? Should he argue? Should he hand over the keys? No, he smiles and lets experience speak louder than debate. That's how wisdom protects itself. It doesn't shout. It doesn't compete. It discerns. In the same way, you must recognize that not everyone is qualified to receive what life has taught you. Some people only want access to your insight so they can say, I knew you before you became who you are. Others are simply collectors of stories. They gather your struggles like souvenirs, never intending to grow, only to compare. And some, believe it or not, just want to find the cracks in your story so they can feel better about the holes in theirs. So the question becomes, who are you giving your wisdom to? Who has earned the right to hear what you've learned the hard way? You see, not everyone is supposed to be your audience. Some people are just spectators, and spectators don't build with you, they just watch. And watching is easy, carrying is hard. Only a few will carry what you carry. Real wisdom doesn't try to be every way. It doesn't need applause. It waits for the right heart, the right season, the right space. Because when you speak wisdom in the wrong room, It can be mistaken for noise. But when you speak it in the right room, it becomes legacy. And that's the difference. Even in everyday life, think about how you handle your valuables. You lock your house. You guard your passwords. You don't just let anyone drive your car. Yet your wisdom, your most valuable asset, you often give away without checking if the person has a license to drive it. So maybe the next time someone asks you for advice, you won't rush to answer. Maybe you'll listen a little longer. Maybe you'll ask yourself, do they just want information? Or are they ready for transformation? Because wisdom is not a gift you give, it's a responsibility you protect. Not everyone deserves access to your vulnerability. This is a hard truth, especially in a world that tells you to just be real, just be open, and just speak your truth. But there's a cost to vulnerability. And if you're not careful, you'll end up paying a price for opening up to people who never had the capacity or the character to handle what you carry. Vulnerability is not weakness. In fact, it takes strength to be vulnerable. But it also takes wisdom, because every time you open your heart, you are exposing something sacred. You're sharing not just information, but your emotions, your experiences, your truth. Things that were birthed in private, shaped in silence, and sometimes carried alone for years. And giving that kind of access to the wrong person isn't brave, it's dangerous. Have you ever told someone something personal, thinking they'd understand, and later realized they only used it as a weapon? Or worse, they reduced it to a joke, a rumor, or a warning label they put on you in rooms you weren't even in. That's what happens when you expose your vulnerability to people who haven't proven they can protect it. There's a difference between being transparent and being exposed. Transparency is intentional, is measured, is guided by discernment. Exposure is reckless. It's handing over the keys to your inner life without checking if the other person knows how to drive. And too many of us are emotionally wrecked because we keep handing our story to people who were never meant to read it, let alone edit it. Think about this. You don't give someone the alarm code to your home just because they knocked on the door. You don't share your bank PIN because someone smiled and said, "Trust me." So why do we treat emotional access with less caution than material things? Vulnerability should be reserved for those who have demonstrated consistency, people who listen not just with their ears, but with their hearts. People who don't just respond, they hold space for you. They don't fix you, they don't judge you, they respect you. And those people are rare. One of the greatest pains in life is to open up to someone, thinking you've found a safe place, only to realize you've walked into a trap. They weren't listening to understand, they were collecting details. They weren't moved by your story, they were amused by your struggle. And when they left, they didn't just walk away, they took parts of you with them. And let's be honest, sometimes we're the ones to blame. Because we're so desperate to be heard, we'll talk to anyone who listens. So eager to be understood, we'll give our heart to people who haven't earned our trust. But validation is not worth vulnerability. Not when the cost is your peace, your dignity, your self-worth. Even in relationships, friendships, partnerships, even family, we must learn the difference between shared blood and shared values. Just because someone is close in relation doesn't mean they're close in spirit. Just because someone shares your space doesn't mean they deserve your secrets. And not everyone who loves you knows how to care for you. You have to protect your inner world, because once it's exposed to the wrong hands, it doesn't just hurt, you start to close off, you start to mistrust. And then even when the right people show up, you hesitate That's the long-term damage of giving your vulnerability to the wrong people. It creates walls that block the ones who are sent to help you heal. So the next time you feel the urge to just open up, pause, ask yourself, is this person safe? Have they shown me honor, consistency, empathy, or are they just curious? Because not everyone who asks about your scars knows how to treat your wounds. Discernment is more powerful than expression. In a world where everyone is told to speak up, let it out, say what's on their mind, we've somehow started believing that saying everything we feel is always the right thing. But expression without discernment can become destruction. Just because you can say it doesn't mean you should. And just because someone is listening doesn't mean they're qualified to hear it. You don't measure maturity by how much someone speaks. You measure it by what they choose not to say, by what they protect, by what they reserve. Because discernment isn't about silence. It's about timing, intention, and trust. It's about knowing what to say, when to say it, and who to say it to. Let's be honest. Some of the deepest regrets we carry in life didn't come from moments we stayed quiet. They came from moments we shared too much, too soon, with the wrong people. We let our emotions speak louder than our wisdom. We expressed pain when we should have paused. We offered insight when we should have observed. And in the process, we taught people how to mishandle what should have never been in their hands in the first place. Imagine a surgeon performing an operation. He doesn't just cut because he knows how. He cuts with precision, guided by training, timing, and care. He studies the situation, he understands the patient, and only then does he go in with steady hands and a specific goal. That's how discernment works. It's surgical. It doesn't move off impulse. It doesn't speak because the mood says so. It moves with purpose, and it speaks when the soil is ready. So many people today are bleeding emotionally, not because someone wounded them, but because they exposed themselves in places that lacked discernment. They expressed hurt on platforms that only provided judgment. They spoke truth in environments that weren't ready. And then when the backlash came, they mistook it for rejection, when in reality it was misplacement. A seed dropped on concrete doesn't grow, not because the seed is bad, but because the ground was never right. And this is where the power of discernment comes in. It guards your wisdom. It protects your vulnerability. It filters your truth through the lens of value. It asks questions before releasing answers. Is this the right time? Is this the right person? Will this build or break? Will this free or trap? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to say nothing, not because you're hiding, but because you're building, not because you're afraid, but because you're wise. Silence doesn't always mean suppression. Sometimes it's strategy. Sometimes it's growth. Sometimes it's choosing your legacy over your impulse. Think about how a sculptor works. They don't strike every part of the stone. They chip slowly, methodically, carefully. Every movement is intentional. That's how we must be with our words. Intentional. Discernment teaches you that your voice is not for everyone. Your wisdom is not for mass consumption. You are not a public fountain. You are a deep well. And deep wells don't gush. They flow when drawn from. And here's a hard question to wrestle with. How much of your emotional fatigue is coming from over-expression? How much peace have you lost? Not because of what others did, but because of what you said without discernment. How many arguments could have been avoided? How many wounds spared? How many relationships preserved? If only you paused, listened, observed, and then chose not to speak. The goal is not just to express. The goal is to be effective. And effectiveness doesn't always mean being heard. It means being understood. And that kind of understanding only comes when discernment leads the way. Validation is not a requirement for revelation. This is one of the most liberating truths you'll ever learn, especially if you've been conditioned to believe that your insight only matters if people clap for it, agree with it, or publicly accept it. But here's the reality. Just because your truth isn't celebrated doesn't mean it isn't true. Just because your revelation isn't popular doesn't mean it isn't powerful. We live in a culture that feeds on approval. Social media has trained us to look for likes before we believe in our voice. And over time, without even realizing it, we start equating silence with irrelevance. If they don't respond, maybe it wasn't worth saying. If they don't applaud, maybe it wasn't powerful. But that's a dangerous lie. Because revelation isn't proven by response. It's proven by endurance. Can it stand the test of time? Can it still hold weight when no one's clapping? Some of the most profound revelations you'll ever carry won't be received immediately. In fact, some of them will be misunderstood, rejected, even ridiculed, not because they lack depth, but because people are always ready for what costs you everything to discover. And here's the thing. They don't have to be. That's not your burden. Your job is not to make your truth acceptable. It's to make sure it's authentic. Have you ever shared something deep, something real, and the room went silent? Not because what you said was wrong, but because they didn't know how to handle it. That moment can be painful, but it's also revealing. It shows you that people often resist what confronts their comfort. They resist what challenges their lens. So they ignore it, downplay it, or dismiss it, not because of what you said, but because of what it triggered in them. You don't plant a seed and expect a tree overnight. Some seeds go deep before they ever show on the surface. Revelation is like that. Sometimes what you say today won't be understood until years later. And that's okay, because your job isn't to force fruit, it's to sow faithfully. If the ground is ready, it'll grow. If it's not your failure, it's just not the season. Let me ask you this. Have you been shrinking your truth because it didn't get the validation you expected? Have you been holding back what you know you were meant to release just because the last time you spoke it, no one responded the way you hoped? If so, you need to realize this. Your voice doesn't need applause to have impact. You're not performing, you're planting. Imagine a lighthouse. It doesn't flash brighter when ships cheer. It just shines consistently, faithfully, regardless of who notices. Because its job isn't to be appreciated. Its job is to guide, to warn, to illuminate. That's what you are when you carry revelation. You're not here for validation. You're here for impact. Whether they recognize your value today or 10 years from now isn't your concern. Truth doesn't expire because people ignore it. And here's the truth many don't want to admit. Sometimes people do recognize your revelation. They just pretend not to. Because acknowledging your insight would mean admitting their lack, so they stay silent, or they deflect, or they even discredit you. Don't let that distract you. Let it reveal them. What you carry is too important to be managed by approval. Your calling is too costly to be subject to opinion. And your voice is too valuable to be silenced by a lack of applause. Speak when it's time, share when it's right, and trust that the right ears, the right hearts, the right minds will eventually hear. As we navigate the journey of life, remember this: your truth is a treasure. your wisdom a gift meant for those who are ready and worthy. Protect your heart with discernment, guard your vulnerability with care, and never let the absence of approval silence the power within you. Speak with purpose, share with intention, and hold fast to the knowledge that your story matters. Even if only a few are prepared to listen, I pray you walk forward with courage, clarity, and confidence, knowing that your truth is your legacy. Thank you for allowing me to share this message with you today. I wish you strength and wisdom on every step of your path. Good luck. And may your journey be filled with purpose and peace.